everyday resilient legend, the stunning, the intelligent Ana Uribe, who is here to share her story today about connecting to her truth after a few nights in prison. Now, Ana was born in Colombia, but she identifies now as a citizen of the world. I love that, Ana. And she's now living in Melbourne, Australia. Ana is a nature connection, yoga and meditation program facilitator, and she's absolutely brilliant. She is also a yoga teacher, trainer, and mentor, and the creator of this wonderful program called AWAKEN. Now, her programs are mental health and trauma informed, so they're a brilliant summary of trauma informed practices with yoga. She's also the facilitator and the co-author of a research project at Victoria University, where she helps deliver a 10-week mental health and trauma-informed yoga and mindfulness program for over 300 university students, which is brilliant. It's a brilliant initiative. Anna also has a degree in a Bachelor of Science, Sustainable Tourism and Hotel Management from the Arizona State University. You really are a world citizen. I love it. Now, Anna, we hear so often today about, these traumatic events and having PTSD, which is the post-traumatic stress disorder. But what I would invite our listeners to acknowledge or to learn about is the idea of post-traumatic growth. So we would love to hear your story about how you have really embodied the gifts of a traumatic experience.
Well, thank you, Casey, first for inviting me to be here with you today and your community. And you said my name very well, so good on that.
It's definitely a tongue twister.
It's a great start for your Spanish lesson.
Thank you.
And it's pretty exciting to be here and for first time sharing out loud one of the many experiences that I have collected over my 34 years of life. And it feels a little bit edgy as we talk, but I like edgy. So as long as it's done in a very beautiful and held space, and I feel it with you. So thank you once again.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story.
So about 7, I would say now, no, about 10 years ago or so, long story short, of course, I can take myself back fully and just remember how I was being walked out of a supermarket handcuffed because I had taken $14 worth of merchandise, and I certainly in that moment didn't carry my passport on me. So the first response from the police was, "We have to take you because we don't know whether you are legal here in the United States or not." And so I know it's like a bit of a shaking in the body for me as well sometimes. Yeah. And so there I was, just being walked out, handcuffed to the cop car. And I just remember myself feeling in complete shock. I just couldn't understand what was really happening, what I had just done. I remember crying and begging the policeman to let me go, that I had money in my purse, that I could pay for the things that I had taken and that I was deeply sorry about. But of course, that didn't work. I thought I was good at convincing, but that didn't work in that moment. And so I remember the cop car just arriving in this station where literally this metal door opens up, the car goes in, the metal door closes, and then a second metal door opens up, and then the car goes in. And I wasn't understanding yet, having an understanding of what was really happening in that moment. And then I'm taken out of the car, and they take the handcuffs off. and they invite me to just sit and wait. And as the cop or the policeman is saying goodbyes, he actually says, "I am sorry," and he leaves me there. And so there I was, continuing crying and not really understanding. And at one point, I just hear my voice, Ana Uribe, or my name. And so I go into the window. They tell me, "Please give us all your belongings." So I had a sweater. They take my sweater off. They leave me with a small tank top and just my shoes and my pants. Now I take my watch off and my purse, and I had to put it in a brown bag, all of it together. And then shortly after, they call my name once again, and they tell me to stand there. And I'm like, "Stand where?" Right behind right in front of a white wall. And they have this number where I had to take a picture with my number of me being arrested. And the first thing, of course, that I'm thinking of, oh my God, this is like the movies.
Yes, that's the vision that I just had too.
Totally. And I'm just like, I can remember the picture as well, which I had to later on struggle through Google, because you could find me on Google if you put my name as like petty theft, Ana Uribe, like with her face completely sad and lost. Anyways, that's another story of the million. And so shortly after the picture is taken, my belongings are put away, they handcuff me again, and they take me through this station where the first part is the male side. So I could see these rooms where were actually just bars, and there was a lot of different men groups. And then there was other rooms where you couldn't see through who was there. I'll just keep walking, and then I turn around, and then there is another side to these rooms where I guess it was the women's side. So I could see right behind me, there was a woman wearing a full, like from here down, like wrap around, so she couldn't even move her body. And she was just behind me trying to fight it off. And then I was just being walked into, there was the third room out of the line, and I get into this room, and there is just two chairs, like long chairs, and there was maybe two women at that point. And then there was a toilet, which was not even covered there if you needed to go to use it. And once I go in there, they take my handcuffs off, and I'm just seated there, and I'm not sure where I'm at. I'm not sure how long am I going to be here. Who knows where I'm at. I was supposed to be taking a flight next day to go back to my corporate job, as I was there for business. I know. And so all these things happening through my head, and I'm not really able to recall how many hours I stayed in that first room. But over the time, I could see different women come through, like, and each time there was a new woman with a new story, mainly women who've experienced, who were there for prostitution, drug abuse, violence at home. And some of them were still under the influence. So some of them were quite agitated. They will fight back and forth. I remember at one point, someone was really being rude to me because she wanted to take my seat. And just, I was just not sure how to deal with this. So I just was as friendly as I could with everyone, as I still was very shut down from the experience and not really connecting with everyone, but I could hear everybody else's stories too. And I would say that I was approximately there for 10 hours. And they ensure that the rooms are really cold. And not only that, every time they brought someone new in, the security people were so rude. They will yell at us like if we had literally committed a just very possibly ugly crimes. They treated us, calling us names, and it just felt very unsettling at the time. And so maybe, 10 hours pass on. And then at one point, a security guard comes in and she's like, okay, ladies, it's time to go out. And I'm like, oh gosh, where am I going next? So they go ahead and put us on a line and they handcuffed us. So not by ourselves, but with each other. So I was in a line of 5 women, each of us handcuffed to each other. And we started being taken. And I was like, where are we going? I asked the lady in front of me and she's like, they're probably taking us back to prison. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? And all of a sudden, I just remember going outside and still it was dark. And we're asked to go inside these bus where I thought once you go in, you'll be able to see the people in front of you. But actually, as you're going in, there is like this metal wall in front of us. So you couldn't have any contact with the person in front. And so I was translated in this bus with a metal wall in front of me, handcuffed to a woman next to me and a woman in both sides. And shortly after, I'm not really sure how long, I can recall, we're being asked to come down the bus, and we get to this facility where apparently I got to find out later on that it was Miami-Dade County, which is the 7th largest prison in United States.
Wow.
And so I arrived there and I'm like, oh my God, how do I contact someone? So I asked, even though it took me maybe 3 different people to ask, because the security people were not really helpful at the time. Finally, someone said, look, if you want to make a phone call, it can only be within the state of Florida. And I'm like, well, I don't know anyone in Florida. What do I do? You could call about someone who helps you get a bond and bond you out. So I called and I said, look, I don't have a number from here. I'm going to give you my parents' number, which was their Skype number. Please contact them. So this person behind the scenes is doing that while I'm in the first stage of prison, where we go into this room, which was another room that was freezing. You go in and there is these bunk beds, and my bed was actually on the floor right next to the toilet. Again, an exposed toilet if you needed it. And we ended up overnighting there. And I remember being so cold that there was another woman who was there for being accused to hit her husband. We just got so close to each other because we were freezing. And the security guard at one point came in and she's like, you two, you're not allowed to do that. So they made us come away from each other. Just that survival of like, oh my God, I'm so cold. I don't care who is next to me. Please warm me up because I'm freezing. Yes. And so there I was still again in this pool of shock, uncertainty. I don't know what's happening. And then at some point, all these women start being called out. And I'm like, okay, maybe I will be next. They call my name and they take me to this room next door. They tell me, take all your clothes off. And I'm like, okay, I'll take my clothes off. And then they're like, turn around, please, bend your legs and cough as you split your butt cheeks out. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I cough, I bend my legs, and they just wanted to ensure that I didn't have anything inside of me. And then they hand me an orange uniform for me to put on. I'm like, this could not get any more movie-like to me. And shortly after that, we are walked to the court where we need to pledge whether we're guilty or not. As I go into the right in front of the judge, which, by the way, it was full of people of all kinds. Like there was people were just handcuffed individually, some people that were fully wrapped in different things so that they couldn't move. Some people that were handcuffed, hands and feet. I'm not sure who was there or what kind of crime they had committed. And so as I went up, I said, I pledge guilty. And she looked and she's like, you're here for $14. And I said, yeah, I taken pens because I'm picky with what kind of pen I write, and creams for feet fungus because I had fungus in my feet from living on the beach in Bahamas. And she's like, you can go. And I was like, oh, yes. And then she was like, wait a minute, where do you live? And I'm like, I live in Bahamas. And she's like, I can't let you go. And so I know. And I'm like, how is this freaking possible? So this in my head is going like, okay, what are they thinking back at home? Does anybody know? I'm missing for more than 24 hours now. So shortly after all these hours, I get transferred to prison, and like fully in the building. So they handcuff us back and they put us in these elevators and they start telling you, this is where 30 plus years who committed a crime live. And you're not allowed in this floor. And you're like, okay. And then there will be very like ensuring who walks when, so nobody will cross paths.
Yeah.
And so shortly I'm in this new flat where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how long I'm going to live here for. It had various rooms. And I decided to stay in the living room area where there was a bunk bed just because I didn't want to be in one of the rooms isolated with other women who I didn't really know. So I remember just being handed food, like a piece of who knows what it was, and an apple. And I was like, there is no way I can eat these. So I had the apple. And just again, in this like really foggy state of shock, almost paralyzed, not wanting to connect with anyone. And then you will hear desperate women in that room, like telling you their story, wanting to give you their number. Please, if you get out before me, call here. I am not, like, everybody was in this like, get me out here. I am innocent. Around who knows what time, when I was already in bed. Oh, and by the way, that night I got woken up by women getting into a fight as well. They had to come and separate them. I get my name is called, and I'm like, oh my God, someone found me. So behind the scenes throughout the whole time, my sister had been given a phone call from the regional manager of the corporate organization I was working for, or company. And it was said that Ana was missing for more than 24 hours. Within an hour and a half, my sister created, of course, all kinds of stories. And then within that hour, once that hour and a half passed, as police went to the hotel room, they ended up finding out that I was in prison. And so then my sister bonded me out, and I was, after a few hours, because they ensured that the process to get me out took another maybe day or so. Then I was out, and it took quite a little bit of time to just settle back into life. You know, I went back home for 2 weeks. They allowed me to go from work for 2 weeks to see my family. I was completely lost and still in shock. Then I went back to work for 3 months. And it's just something was not feeling right inside of me, which I wasn't really sure what it was. There was no understanding. There was no, okay, yeah, I just went through this massive experience, but like, come on, I can go on through life. Like, but something just didn't feel right. And so 3 months later, I quit my job and start traveling, trying to find the way of getting this kind of feeling out of my body, whatever it was. But of course, yeah, I lived in France for a little bit. Then I went and lived in Galapagos Island. Yeah, paradise. But I wasn't feeling any paradise inside of me because I certainly hadn't dealt with something that had happened to me. And so at one point, my mom is like, okay, it's time to come home, which I hadn't lived home or with my family for a really long time. And so I landed in Colombia. And for 6 months, I sat in a safe container. Very blessed to say that. Very fortunate. With my darkness. I sat with the darkness. And I was able to slowly move through that. Or not move through it, but actually really sit with it. Sit with it, feel it, which was really hard. I know through that time, just for first time, I started to realize that there was not only this experience, but as well as other experiences that I was carrying behind or in my body that I hadn't fully dealt with. And so here's when, first, it was just sitting in that darkness. There was not much of moving or doing because there was nothing that I could really do but just being in it. And then once that phase started to slowly fade a little bit, I started moving my body. So I was a runner at the time, and I was starting to dip my toes more into yoga. Then I started to doing more breathing exercises. Then I started getting a little bit into meditation. And so I started building this relationship with my body in a different way that I've never done before. And now starting to notice the impact of connecting to my body when I was feeling ready. And so from that massive experience, the opportunity to come to Australia arises. And I land here, and within the first 3 weeks, I realized that paradise is not really where you're at. You're not living wherever you're living, but it's actually in here. And so how do I connect to that? And in my experience so far, is that sometimes to connect to that paradise inside, we as humans have to go through darkness. And so landed here, and I started fully devoting myself to yoga. And I said, wow, this is something very special. And I must share this with the world because it's so unique and it's so helpful to the healing of humanity. So I became a yoga teacher, and now it's been 7 years. 7 years of sharing, and of course, this experience, as many other ones that I've had, inspired me to work in prison systems with youth who have experienced traumatic events, but also with what we may say, like just the day-to-day people we encounter. Because as you mentioned, yes, there is the PTSD and the complex that is highly spoken about today, but trauma itself it's happening to all of us. And it's just anything that perhaps triggers our nervous system that can be traumatic.
So true. And Ana, I love what you shared there, especially about this paradise and seeking, well, let's go to somewhere else to feel better and go to another place to seek this paradise. But it's really finding that place of paradise within us. And this is, I speak about this all the time with my clients, and really resilience is about reconnection, and it's about developing relationships with ourselves, with others, and our support network, and also our environment. And you're talking about a critical element here, which is reconnecting with yourself. And I think that yoga is such a brilliant tool for that. And like you mentioned, we're all going through trauma, especially at this time in Australia and around the world. We've seen droughts, we've seen floods, we've seen bushfires, and now we've got a pandemic. As there's so much trauma in everybody's lives, and it's we all experience it in different ways, and we all have the ability to cope in different ways. And like you said, it's finding the tools that work for you. And I love that so much. So that is the brilliant coping skills, is like move your body, breathing, meditation, and yoga. But if you was to give any sort of advice, Ana, at the moment, if somebody was going through an experience like you, or another type of traumatic experience where they're sort of transitioning back into their daily life and integrating, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would suggest that it may be useful to first find a safe environment where you can go through that. Because it's inevitable. If we don't go through that, of course there is the right moment for everything. It will catch up at some point. So to first is to find that environment, and to ask yourself, like, what creates a safe environment for me so that I can go through this? And that may be unique to each of us. And then once that's done, perhaps just to let yourself, when it's possible, because sometimes it won't be possible, but when it's possible, to feel into whatever is coming up. Maybe find a support system for you to go to go through that, that can go along the side with you. And when you're ready, to start connecting with possible tools, which the tools are actually inside of you. Breath, it's a beautiful way to regulate your own rhythms inside your body. But breath sometimes doesn't work for everybody. So maybe connecting to sound, or it may be connecting to touch, just the sense of touch. So just finding different tools, maybe is movement, that can support in a very subtle, not putting or pressure way, how to connect to your body. And maybe through that there will be some unraveling, some unraveling, which I don't want to say this is what's going to happen. No, you'll see. The only way to actually see it is by giving it a go.
I love.
Did that make any sense?
Makes perfect sense. It's it's about giving different things a go, because until we give them a go, we don't know actually what works for us. And we are in such a reactive healthcare system. It's a disease-based model. So we typically wait for something to happen, a trauma, or us to get sick, or a disease, or unwell, and then we treat the problem. And in actual fact, we can start to develop these skills and these tools, like you said, to figure out what resonates with us and what works for us. So if and when, because it will always happen, problems will catch up with us, traumatic experiences will happen throughout our lifetime. If and when that happens, then we have those tools to sort of, revert back to, or pick and choose the tools that are working for us at that time. I know for me, I definitely use yoga when I'm feeling like I need a really gentle approach to my healing, and to, my proactive care around my body and movement. I use yoga and breath work and meditation. And sometimes that's not the right time. Sometimes I feel like I need to move a lot, and I'm either angry or I need to release. So that's not the right tool for me at that time. So I might go for a run or go to the gym or have something where I'm, expressing or dancing, So I love that you said that. It's, really finding the tools that work best for us in that moment of what we
in
need.
that moment. Yes, yes, because what worked yesterday may not work for in this moment. So expanding the box of tools so that you can start picking and choosing. And this is something that I share in the programs that I facilitate and create, is different tools, and just seeing what you resonate with and taking home, and hopefully through that you find what supports you personally in that moment in your journey.
I love that so much, Ana. Ana, you're an absolute everyday resilient legend. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know that I've gained so much from hearing from you, and I know that our listeners will as well. Ana, how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Simply through my website, ana-uribe.com. Get confused between Spanish and English. You can also find me through social media on Facebook or Instagram through the same name. And that's the best ways to get in contact with me.
Perfect. And for those of you who do not know how to spell Uribe, which I didn't, I will put it in the show notes for you so you can reach out to Ana. She is an absolute legend and a beautiful soul. Thanks again for your time today, Ana.
Thank you so much.
What an absolutely beautiful soul and everyday resilient legend Ana is. Now, just remember, when I'm talking to you about the coping skills in this next section, I might say things like chunk it, map it, block it, flip it. And when I'm referring to it, I'm referring to the problem or the problem that you may be having. Now, I can't stress this enough. These coping skills that I'm about to share with you are essential because they are transferable across the board. You can use them in any situation, any context, with any person or environment. They are really, honestly, just such amazing skills to learn to build up your coping skills and your coping toolbox so that you can pull it out and use them no matter what your situation is or when it is. Now, trauma is happening to all of us, and it can be seen as anything that's really sort of triggering or affecting our nervous system. Whether it be, personal trauma that we're having and experiencing, either from the floods or the bushfires, and now even the pandemic. These are triggering traumas in our lives. So, these traumas can really be affecting our daily functioning. And so here are some skills and the top 5 hacks for really reconnecting with your truth after experiencing any type of trauma so that you can help integrate back into your daily life and get back into routine. So number 1 is flip it. Now, instead of focusing on the trauma and it manifesting into a type of, post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress disorder, you can actually use it to flip it and utilize the experience for personal traumatic growth. Now, I spoke about that before, but it's really about stretching our ability to build our resilience, because resilience is so key. And resilience is actually all about relationships. It's about developing our relationships with 3 things. First is self, others, and then the natural world or the environment that we're in. So it's really about reconnecting to self. That's the most important thing in this context. And really trying to be proactive in your healing process. Now, number 2 is plan it. Now, plan your healing journey first by trying to find a safe environment that you can start the healing process. Find a support team or a support network to go through it with, whether it's sort of friends, psychologists, or family. And you can really ask yourself, what creates a safe environment for me so that I can go through this? And then we want you to sit in the darkness and sit with those emotions and really feel into it. Now, often we really shy away from this process because it hurts and it doesn't feel good. So just recognizing that these feelings are temporary and really letting you self-feel that emotion so you can pass through it, you know, and you can choose how long you spend in this space, really. But we tend to carry emotions in our body, and if we don't deal with them, you know, you're at risk of it showing up in, you know, physical, psychological, or mental issues, illnesses, or diseases in our body. So, you know, remember that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether it's Paris, the Bahamas, or Colombia, or whatever environment that you're in, you know, if you bury it down and bury this trauma and don't deal with the trauma, it will show up in other areas of your life eventually. It'll show up at some point. So number 3 is around move it. Move your body, whether it's yoga, dancing, running, any type of movement. Like, movement helps to release emotions that can be stuck in our body. And it also helps us to get our daily dose of happy brain chemicals because it triggers dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. That's our dose. Really important to get that as well. Now, number 4 is love it. Love your body. Now, when we're disconnected from our bodies, it can be really difficult to release stuck emotions. So building up a relationship that reconnects you with your body through practices like breath work or meditation, you know, knowing that these tools are inside of you, the breath and meditation and those skills, you don't have to go and pay for expensive trauma counseling to begin the healing process. You know, connect to sound, touch, and movement to help you connect back in with your body and help you unravel those stuck emotions. Now, last but not least, number 5, the top hack is thank it. Now, forgiving and coming to terms with the experience will help you to let go of not only holding on to the story, but the experience as well. And sometimes we have to experience the darkness to see the light. Again, remembering that paradise isn't in terms of the place that you are, but experiencing paradise is really feeling that inside of you, feeling that paradise inside. Now, just like me, I used my biggest breakdown to transform it into my biggest breakthrough. And again, this is the idea of post-traumatic growth rather than using it as post-traumatic stress. Now, whether you're dealing with trauma or not, I invite you to use these different types of skills and coping skills and try out what works for you. It's different for everybody. Now, if you've loved this episode of Everyday Resilient Legends and you've gotten lots out of it, please, please, please share it with your loved ones and let's get this important information out there for people to be able to use. And also, if you know of any other Everyday Resilient Legends that could be interviewed by me on this series, please reach out to me at mental.health.hacker at Facebook or Instagram. And I'm Dr. Casey Delmara, your soul sparker and high vibe coach. Until next time, you've got this. I believe in you.